one of the most critical questions that everybody has to answer is this: what makes you unique? And not only are you going to be asked that question in an interview or a first date or a job application or college application, but it's also the question that's asked about you from life. What makes you unique? There's only one of you. So what are you going to do to express that to the world? And this challenge comes before all of us, especially as we're growing up, because, and we're going to get into this in this episode, we all want to be accepted, and acceptance can quickly be done by fitting in. And fitting in, though, is a way to neglect what makes you unique and hide it. So you can fit in, dress like everybody else, look like everybody else, talk like everybody else, listen to what they listen to, post what everyone posts. And yet, what we really long for is true freedom and being our true selves. So, how do you do that? Today, I'm going to show you how. It's by going inward, it's going on the deeper journey. And I'm bringing one of my favorite friends, Michael Davidson, who works for Team Rubicon. If you don't know Team Rubicon, please look them up. It's a ton of veterans across the country and the world who respond to disaster situations, health crises, humanitarian problems. And this is my language, they redeploy veterans into those crisis situations and partner with FEMA and Red Cross. And as they're helping people through those crises, they're also providing a vehicle and a platform for veterans to find and rediscover purpose in their lives. And it's an amazing organization. Michael's doing some great work leading what's called the Clay Hunt Fellowship Program. So show notes, do a deep dive there. But now let me introduce you to my friend, Michael. Hey, Michael, thank you for being on the YouSchool podcast. You and I have been friends, I'm counting, for about 6 years. It feels like 60, though, because it's tricky to gauge and quantify the level of friendship that you have with somebody. I mean, there's that term, are we best friends? I just like to use the word favorite friends. You're one of my favorite friends. And we've never lived in the same town. I think we've seen each other a total of 4 times, plus or minus.
Yep, less than half a dozen.
Yeah. And yet, you're one of my favorite people and friends. And when it comes to this particular conversation, this particular question, you're the first and only person that came to mind that I thought would be really relevant. What we're trying to do in these interviews is more or less to model what it looks like for somebody to go deeper on these critical questions. And so you have no prep for this. That's what I keep reiterating that. There's no prep for this. I just want to show, if you're listening or watching, what it looks like to do this on your own, to look at one of these particularly deep questions, critical questions, and go a little bit deeper to try to find some clarity for yourself. Or if you're working with somebody, maybe you're a parent with a kid, or you've got a friend who's going through a career transition, or a friend that's just trying to figure out who they are. This is how you have these kind of conversations, which are pretty unusual. It's pretty unusual to go really deep on these questions that are right in front of us. So the question of the day is, what makes you unique? And the reason I wanted you, Michael, and you're going to get a chance to introduce yourself, you're one of the most unique guys I know. And not only are you unique, but you have no problem being unique. You know who you are, you own it, and my hunch is that you've done quite a bit of work to get there. So first, could you just give us a little, maybe a rundown of the bio of who you are?
First and foremost, I'm Michael, Michael Davidson, and I'm a 23-year veteran in the United States Navy. And just for the audience, if I'm looking down or looking away, either I'm taking notes or just I have hearing loss, so it helps me just to concentrate on one energy. But I'm definitely engaged. Yeah, so 23 years in the Navy. Got out in 2012. Entered into probably like the darkest depression I ever went through, because I had lost my identity, my community, my purpose, and then found my way back to the light. And in doing so, that's where I found you, Scott, back in 2015. So, yeah, I guess at the end of this year, it'll be 7 years that, we have been, and I like that, favorite friends, like, because you are. We have some of the most meaningful conversations that I've ever had with anyone. And like you said, we've only met we've met less than half a dozen times physically.
When it comes to this particular question, what makes you unique? You brought it up already. Your transition out of the Navy was really difficult, but I'm curious, I guess, about the transition into the Navy for you. I've never served in the military, but I've seen movies, and you walk in, you get your head shaved, you get a uniform, you are being stripped of identity. I mean, maybe that's just a kind of a lame way to say it, but just talk about that. You're all looking alike. You're not unique. You're not special. Tell me what you think about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you go back to like why I joined the Navy, when I got out of high school, like I had a partial scholarship to the School of Visual. I wanted to be an artist, so I had a partial scholarship to the School of Visual Arts in New York, and it just didn't really pan out. So I ended up moving back home and going to community college, where I kind of majored in fencing. Didn't really last that well. And then, long story short, coming back into my sophomore year, I just couldn't do it. And I joined the Navy because I love my grandfather. My grandfather always had great things to say about the Navy. He served in the Navy. And I'm like, well, okay, so if my parents can't pay for my college and my grandparents, whatever, we can't pay for my college, I'm going to go get my, GI Bill and go be an artist. So I joined the Navy, and
right there, just to break that up for a sec, Michael, the idea of going into the Navy as an artist, that just speaks back to what makes you unique. There's not many. I don't think those aren't themes I think of together. Artists and armed services. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, you don't have a lot of time for expression. But I found myself fast forward 10, 12 months after joining boot camp, I was in Guam and I was on a submarine, and I didn't have any designation. So basically I was what's called a bosun's mate. And that meant when we're in port, we paint the boat. So I remember spending about 30 days, stripping the boat down and then repainting it. I mean, nothing exciting.
Yeah. It's
black. But I took a lot of pride in my, just in painting this boat. Not everyone else in the division that I was serving with did, but I did. And I remember I took a Polaroid of the boat, put it into an envelope, sent it to my art teacher from high school. And it's like my latest project.
Masterpiece.
Perfect.
You had
many hues of black.
You had obviously different roles, 26 years in the Navy. How does that 23. How does that happen? How do you get picked? Is it off your interests? Is it off your aptitudes? Do you raise your hand and say, you know what, I love this particular, I'm pretty good at math, I like people. How do you get selected? How does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, joining the Navy, that's all volunteer. You just I'm good. Submarines, you have to volunteer again. So a little bit of a more unique community. Just everyone just realizes that I'm cool with going under the water for a couple months at a time. So that brings in a different community. And then I would say, overall, the success of my career, because I consider my career very successful, um, and that is in regard to the people I met, the people I served with, the people I led, the people that led me.
Mm.
And what I found to sort of be the recipe for success is just really getting to know those that you serve with,
Mm.
which means breaking down like a lot of barriers, but just being your genuine self
Yeah.
and not letting rank necessarily dictate like your correspondence or your engagement with those that you're serving with.
If we had met halfway through your career, what do you think I would have noticed about you that would have been unique compared to other folks wearing the same uniform, similar rank, similar experience?
I remember getting called up to the captain's stateroom when I was an ensign. So that's like midway through my career. We were doing a stores load. So that's like when we're getting ready to go to sea for a long time. So like you got to load like a lot of provisions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's typically like the enlisted folks that are like, hauling all this stuff on. It's just like, box,
Mm-hmm.
here you go, box, here you go. And I don't know, the way I was brought up on submarines, I would just like, I couldn't just look at this and, drink my cup of coffee. I got it, took off my shirt and not like bare chested, but just, like down to my t-shirt and just joined the line.
Uh-huh.
And over like the general announcing system over the ship, it's just like Ensign Davidson, please report to the captain's stateroom.
Uh-oh.
So, I put my shirt back on, go to the captain's stateroom. It's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, we were kind of slowing down the line. We didn't have enough people. So I just jumped in. It's like, well, your role as an officer is to like observe and correct. And I told him, like, well, I thought I was observing and correcting as being part of the line.
Yeah.
And if you notice, like I was shifting my position, throughout. I would jump in and out, like just seeing like where the choke points are and everything. But yeah, it's just the model was like, as an officer, you should just be like on the periphery and look in and judge and correct. But for me, I felt like, which speaks a lot to just who I am, just like, well, let me get in there and see what it feels like and see where the tension points are.
Yeah.
And I would say another thing that like where I felt like, pretty unique was my next tour on the USS Los Angeles. I was the department head. I was still a young officer. I was a lieutenant junior grade. And when I reported aboard, I was leading like 18 people. And I gave them all the Myers-Briggs type indicator assessment. And I remember my chief coming up to me. He's like, hey, I had to take this when I went through the Chiefs Academy. I'm like, cool. That's awesome. Why'd you do that? Well, to discover who I am. I'm like, awesome. And that is definitely like why we should do this. But what my intent is that we get to know the crew. We get to know who we're responsible for. And this is a great opportunity. And he looked at me like, well, I could just say like, I mean, I won't go into sailor speak, but looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah.
But then he soon realized like why I was doing it. And he really got to know those that he was leading in a different way.
Well, that picks up on a thread. That's certainly an aspect of who you are that I've gotten to know. You now professionally help other people figure themselves out. I'm not sure what language you would use. That's a really shorthanded way to say it. So to see that thread back, even before it was your job, before it was required or expected of you, that you were on that journey yourself and helping other people do it. That's a big part, I think, of why doing this inner reflective work is helpful. When you see those threads, you can not only see the past, you can also start projecting out into the future. So maybe with that context, you talked about this transition post Navy. What was it that helped you to finally figure that part of you out and pursue that? Because I don't think that was your first step from the Navy, was to go help other people in finding their personalities and finding their gifts and talents.
Yeah. Good question. I would say that, like, I had a yearning when I got out to help others. I really did. Like, I mean, humanitarian assistance was and is my passion. Regardless of like what sort of economic status you are in the United States, you still live a very privileged life as compared to the rest of the world. And those like very insecure areas, when they get inundated with a natural disaster, we should do something. So there's a call to action there. And where did I really get this shift into like helping others? Well, it took a lot of work on myself, and this is no shameless plug for YouSchool, but it seriously is a plug for YouSchool. It's when I got honest with myself and started writing out my story, and I started visualizing like hey, this is actually who I am, and this is what got me here. And the revelation came in like with who do I want to be and what do I need to do that? And, that was back like, Scott, I guess like the first time I went to YouSchool was 2015. And I mean, I had made some revelations getting up to there, as when I was a fellow, and just really just like doing what I believed in. But it was like when I went to that YouSchool, and, honestly, first time I went to YouSchool, it was more of like sort of an audit of the program.
Yeah.
The second time I went through YouSchool, which was late 2015, I got honest, and I got hungry, and just sort of felt like the fire in the belly, and like, this is the path I want to walk on, and I know what I need to do. I know who I need in my life, and I found them, and here I am, 7 years later on a podcast with you after taking like 175 people, I think it's 175, maybe 180 people through YouSchool.
Yeah.
Helping veterans and, parents of veterans go through this program.
I talk about, and if you're watching last episode, you heard this as a theme. There's a human desire to fit in with other people. You want to be accepted, and I don't know if there's anything worse in the human experience than to be rejected. So a survival instinct kicks in, and in my life, I've done many things to avoid rejection, to get acceptance, and the path that takes you down, however, is the path to often lose yourself, not really be who you are. And if you go down that path trying to find acceptance, you'll get some version of it, but you won't get what you're really longing for, which is deep connection, belonging, and true acceptance. That can only come from owning who you are and declaring it. As we wrap up, I'm curious, in your life and how you now help other people do that same thing, do you have either a warning, a disclaimer for that work? I'm just curious, how do you encourage people down that path? Because it's not easy. It takes a ton of courage to look at who you are and then start owning it.
Whew. Yeah. I mean, dude, heavy question. Love it. Um, 2012, 2015, I went through I half-assed. I'm sorry, can I say that? I half-assed therapy.
Mm-hmm.
It was like what I thought I needed, but I was just kind of feeling someone else's agenda.
Hmm.
I had lost my voice, so I couldn't talk to like I had no self-talk.
Hmm.
And it was when I went through YouSchool. I mean, again, no shameless plug here, but the questions forced me to talk to myself, to be honest with myself. And when I started doing that, just that self-talk helped me find my voice again. And it helped me believe into like, well, no kidding. Like, this is who you can be. This is who you want to be. So it went from someone else talking to me about what I should do, and it forced me into like talking to myself, and through that, finding my voice again. To which then, the way I explain, like, several of the personality assessments we go through, like, there's the room you live in, there's a basement and a balcony.
Okay.
And what this opportunity really afforded me was to go to the balcony and project that.
But one of the last questions I have, probably the last, part of being unique, I've just discovered that everybody has their own quirks. And I'm curious, if we were to follow you around for a day or two, what are some of the quirkiest things you do?
Yes, I like to be unique. I mean, I'm an Enneagram type 4. That's in my nature. I like to be unique. I'm very moody. I'm sensitive. I withdraw. Silence is okay. And then like getting down to like just simple things, like I use a pencil, and not just any pencil. Like I have to like specifically, like I research pencils. So I have like high quality Japanese pencils. I use good paper. I don't know. There's just like very weird nuances.
Yeah.
Like I don't like watches that take batteries. Like, I mean, and I celebrate uniqueness, and that is why I always tell the fellows and those that I love, thank you for being you. When you can show that uniqueness of you, I mean, that feeds exactly what I need in my life. I don't like fluff. I don't like, just small conversation. I want to know you, and I don't know, maybe that makes me unique, but I like being unique because I get to know you.
Well, you certainly have a gift. Yeah, that's what you do for me as a friend. You've done that now for hundreds, literally, of other people, giving them the space to explore and have the courage to be themselves. And that part that I think you do so exceptionally well, not only do you live that yourself, but when someone shares something that they haven't disclosed before, and maybe they felt embarrassed by it or they're afraid of their own rejection, I mean, you're by far the best person I know that fully embraces whatever comes out. So back to, if you're watching this, listening to this, and you're working with somebody, be like Michael and embrace whatever whatever they share, even if it's bizarre, weird, offensive to you. That may your first look and glance be embracing it, and if that's you, then practice what he's been preaching. Try to have that embracing voice for yourself. So, Michael, thanks for being on the show, being a friend, and thanks for being you.
Thank you. Love you, Scott.
You too, man.